Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Demetrius Pyburn, and I'm an associate here at Haynsworth, Sinkler, Boyd. I want to welcome you all for being here today at the Veterans in the Workplace presentation. I want to confirm that everybody here will receive a professional development point credit towards recertification upon completion of the presentation, and all sources will be provided at the end of the presentation. A little bit of background about myself. I'm passionate about this program because I too served in the military. I currently serve in the 324th Expeditionary Signal Battalion as a logistics specialist. Prior to that, I was a HR specialist with the 812 Transportation Company in Charlotte, North Carolina. And before law school, I served on active duty in the Army's only Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. A little bit about our law firm. We're a statewide full-service law firm with offices in Charleston, Columbia, Florence, and Greenville. If you have not already subscribed to our blog, please subscribe for updates, seemployersblog.com. I will be monitoring the Q&A chat on Zoom. We'll address as many questions as we possibly can. If we can't address it there, we'll connect offline and we'll definitely answer those questions. And a brief disclaimer, this presentation is provided for information only and it's not to be taken as legal advice. All situations are different and you should speak with a legal counsel for specific advice. Today we have the pleasure of having two speakers, Marlin Bodison from the South Carolina Department of Employment and Workforce. Marlin's received his Bachelor's of Science degree in General Business Administration from South Carolina State. He's served 22 years in the Army, 6 years on active duty at Fort Bliss as an armor officer, and transitioned to the reserves as a transportation officer. And he could speak a little bit about his professional veteran military experience, but now he serves as the South Carolina Department of Employment and Workforce State Veterans Program Coordinator since December of 2008. In that position, he plans, coordinates, and supervises the Veteran Service Delivery System for employment and training programs. He develops, implements new initiatives in accordance with the state agency and division strategic plans for the Jobs for Veterans State Grant. He also works collaboratively with the American Job Center supervisors, Workforce Development Board directors, also works with the Department of Veteran Affairs, South Carolina's Department of Veteran Affairs, National Guard and Reserve Unit Commands. And we also have with us today, Carolyn Baynes, works in a couple different roles. She also served in the Coast Guard, if I'm not mistaken, as an electrician's mate. She serves in the role of in the Employment Support and Guard of Reserves as a Veterans Advocacy Organization volunteer, and also with the National Guard, she works as an employment advisor. And in that role, she assists guardsmen, reservists, and veterans and their dependents to find meaningful employment in the private sector. And as a member of the South Carolina National Guard Operations Palmetto Employment Team since 2018, she seeks positive partnerships between the military and employer communities. She researches job opportunities and matches them with the skill sets of soldiers, sailors, Marines, and family members who are looking for work. She helps our military understand how their abilities develop in the armed forces, qualify them for civilian employment. And also at the same time, she makes the employers confident that the military training can prepare applicants to meet specific business needs. Thank you both for being here today with me.
Glad to be here.
So I want to set the scene, set the stage for our conversation here this afternoon. Veterans are a valued member of our workforce. Research shows that 65% of veterans have some college education or higher, making veterans more educated than their civilian peers. 68% of employers report that veterans perform better than or much better than their civilian peers, and 57% of veterans stay in their jobs longer. than the median 2.5-year tenure for subsequent roles after their first post-separated job. However, 4 out of 5 employers report difficulties filling jobs due to available talent. And studies also show that HR managers are reporting that veteran recruiting are in the top 3 priorities of their recruiting efforts. Veterans have in-demand skills that correspond with civilian application. Most employers point to professionalism, teamwork, communicating effectively, critical thinking, problem solving, and ethics as some of the more important skills for workplace success. Employers continue to place a high value on these core competencies, and veterans hone these competencies during their military service. These skills are a way of life, such as work ethic, teamwork, leadership and management, mental toughness, adaptability, and professionalism. Yet veterans face difficult times with employment, with 90% of veterans indicating that there were obstacles in obtaining employment. Although veterans have many in-demand skills, they face these challenges. Once employed, nearly half of those veterans leave their first post-separation position in the first year, and more than 65% leave within the first 2 years. Why do 65% of veterans leave their first job within the 2 years? Several factors may include poor fit with the company, poor cultural fit, misalignment with job skills and job location. It's equally important for veterans to understand the position where they're applying for and the overall company culture. Understanding the position requires the company's culture in mind will help them leverage their individual talents in the workplace. Your veterans employment program, if you're leading it with your HR professionals and a proactive, well-informed veteran, can mitigate some of these challenges. And employers' investment is in a strong and effective military practice starts with ensuring there's adequate resources dedicated to including HR professionals who will champion military hiring as part of their culture. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the program, what makes a veteran-friendly workplace. And we can stop the presentation right now. Marlin, I want to bring you in on the conversation. Can you give us a little background and provide us a little context of the state efforts and veteran hiring?
Yes, I'll gladly. I want to first talk about how veterans come to SC Works for our services. There's 3 things that's going on in South Carolina. We have 8 installations in South Carolina, and they have transition assistance programs. Those we brief along with the contractor for DOL vets, and we put one of our staff in front of these folks to pretty much educate them on what to expect during transition. So currently we're doing virtual in 6 of the 8 installations, and we're doing in-person at the Coast Guard base in Charleston and on Fort Jackson. As a part of that briefing, we query the folks who are staying in South Carolina so we can start working with them before they get transitioned out of the military. So the biggest thing a transition service member does is file for unemployment. I think we call it UCX claims when they get out the military. Okay, that's when they come in and file for their military claims, and then they have to automatically register for work in our labor exchange system. So they won't get their first unemployment check once they get out until they register for work and conduct 2 job searches a week. We talk about transitioning service member. On the average of a 20-year military career, a service member or their spouse would relocate approximately 6 times in a 20-year employment. The challenge for the spouses, or most of their spouses are, not going to be leaving in 2 to 3 years. Most spouses have licensing and credentialing careers. So what we've done in South Carolina through our labor license and regulations as a partner with them. So if say a spouse is a real estate agent in California, the husband gets transferred to South Carolina. South Carolina will issue that spouse a provisional license where they can work selling real estate while working on getting their certification in South Carolina. All the branches of the military are currently reimbursing anywhere from up to $500 to $1,500 for those licensure fees for the spouses. That's a very good thing we're doing, and other states are doing it as well. That's a very hidden talent pool of military spouses. Like I said, over a 20-year career, they're relocating at least 6 times and uprooting themselves, not only in the CONUS United States, but overseas as well. So I'm going to secondly talk about some of the training opportunities that we offer veterans. And some of us it's through the VA, and some of us through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act we love to call WIOA. OJT is the biggest bang for your buck, not only for the veteran, but for the employers. So let's say a veteran goes to work at Cooper Standard in Spartanburg, and the training program on the OJT contract is 400 hours at $10 an hour. So Cooper Standard will get reimbursed 50% of that veteran's training wage. Okay, so the veteran benefits by getting the skills and working, and while working, and the employer benefits by getting 50% of the training costs reimbursed. Just had a call this morning about 9 o'clock, a team's meeting. South Carolina is starting a veteran apprenticeship pilot here in South Carolina. So that was our kickoff meeting. So we're trying to push veterans more to apprenticeship. The beauty of apprenticeships are, let's say, so if a veteran gets in an approved registered apprenticeship program, they also get a monthly housing allowance based on their family size and how many people in their family. So if a veteran goes to work, the first 6 months, they get 100% of the monthly housing allowance. The second 6 months, well, they get their pay and they get 80% of that monthly housing allowance. So as you go through the apprenticeship, as your pay increase, the housing allowance decreases. So by the end of the training, the housing allowance will be 0, and then your wage would have earned, you would have got more wages. So you probably start at $15 an hour, top out about 24, 25 when you finish. So it's a gradual balancing act. So that's the biggest thing that's going on now. Anybody, we have a program through the VA, VRNE, Veteran Vocational Reemployment and Employment. And what that is if you are a city, county, state, or federal company, you get to utilize a veteran for up to 12 months where you don't pay them at all. The VA pays for them. It's called a non-paid work experience program. It gives them, first of all, 6 months to see if your company is the right fit for them, and then you can see if the veterans is the right fit for you. This program started in January of 2009, and here at our agency at SCDU, we've probably hired about 150 since the program was accepted. It's a very good program to give veterans, disabled veterans, it gets geared toward disabled veterans, work experience, and help them with the culture fit. Demetrius was showing a slide just a minute ago, and I want to go over 8 military skills that help veterans land jobs. First is teamwork, which is no explanation needed. Second is going to be commitment. We were talking earlier, me and Carolyn, about people. You said that 1 year on the job, 90% leave, and 65% after the second year. But most veterans bring commitment to the employer. Communication skills, orally and in writing. Dedication. Veterans, raise their hand to the flag, and they're dedicated to doing their day-to-day duties. Following orders. You show a veteran what to do. They're quick learners, and they'll get the job done. Just make sure your orders are clear and concise. They're good at problem solving. The veterans, in training and in combat, go through some very severe situations. They have to think quick on their feet And most veterans are very well adept to do that. Veterans, and the seventh thing I got is the veterans are very adaptable. Yet they have to be adaptable to weather. You have to be adaptable to living conditions. You have to be very, very adaptable. Back in the Persian Gulf, I got deployed to Bremerhaven, Germany to load out the 7th Corps. The warmest it got for 45 days was 20 below zero. 6 months later, I stepped off a plane in Dammam, Saudi Arabia. It was 135 degrees. What a shift in 6 months. Okay. And the last thing veterans bring to the table is they respect each other and they respect their supervisors and coworkers. And some of the benefits of hiring a veteran, veterans are goal-oriented. Okay. Veterans are trained leaders. I mean, even at the lowest rank of E5. Yeah, you don't have to be a general to be a leader. You're a squad leader as an E5. Veterans take responsibilities very seriously. And like I said, veterans, a lot of veterans really don't like to let their supervisors down or their coworkers down. Veterans know how to make decisions. At my 30-something years of leadership in this position and sometimes in the military, you know, I would not like to assign you a job and talk you through every step of the way of doing it. Because to me, sometimes failure breeds success. You got to give somebody the opportunity to fail as long as it's not life-threatening. Then you give a person a chance to learn and do it on their own. One thing, I don't know whether this is a plus or a minus, veterans speak their minds. I mean, they do. They pretty much tell you, you know, what their thoughts are. So, but to me, that's frank, as long as they're not disrespectful. Veterans work very well independently. A lot of you are hiring managers. A lot of people ask in interviews, how would you like to be managed? Just give me the clear and concise things and let me go and give me, I call it the 1/3, 2/3 rule. You take 1/3 of the time telling me what you need, give me 2/3 of the time to get it done and get it back to you on time. Veterans have a great work ethic. Yes, the ones on active duty do, because they have something on military installations called prisons. So if they don't go to work or don't show up, they get locked up. They don't have that kind of guidance when they get out of the military. So even in our agency, we're the employment agency. We have some veterans that we deal with, you know, attendance issues. So you would think not, but some skills don't carry over to the civilian world. And that's probably the #1 skill that does it for a small portion of veterans. Veterans can help you organize your business, help you organize your work floors, help and bring new ideas that somebody who may have not served and served and lived in many different cultures may not bring to the table. And we have a wide age difference in veterans. The average age for the veterans we served across the country is 64 years of age. I say that because a lot of these veterans that are still looking for work in their early 60s and above, or below, down to 55 years old, they know technology. They do, so they can come into your workplace and keep up with those millennials. The beauty of the older veterans, and a lot of veterans think they get a bad rap because they're old, but when we do performance for our program, younger veterans get hired at a higher rate than older veterans, but older veterans stay on the job longer than the younger veterans. Okay, I think I got one more statement, and I'll be done with this. Veterans understand health and safety. On any military day, whether it's active duty, National Guard, or Reserve, there are two things at the beginning of the day, and one thing at the beginning of the day and one thing at the end of the day is safety brief. So if your company is worried about your safety posture, make a veteran your safety officer. That's something that's been instilled in them for the many years of service. And like I said again, veterans don't give up. They just want to be given a chance to show you what they can do.
Thanks, Marlon. And I want to pick up on two things. I want to bring Carolyn into the conversation, and two things that the veterans not giving up and they want to be brought in, and also how military personnel, they go through severe issues. And I want to bring Carolyn in on the topic. You speak with veterans on a day-to-day in your role. I want you to talk a little bit about your experiences in engaging with those veterans and those military personnel, and share with the members of the audience the perspective, the negative connotation, the negative perspectives that military personnel have when they're looking for jobs and in their recruiting efforts, and how the longer they wait and the longer periods it takes to get hired on at an employer, what that does to a service member.
Okay. If you have to shut me up, you just go right ahead and do that. All right. So in my job, I work with not only the Guard and the Reserves, but also any veteran or their dependent. So what we do is under Operation Palmetto Employment and as a contractor for the National Guard for Employment Services is I help them with their resumes and finding jobs. So I'm involved in a lot of veterans organizations. So what I hear from, let's just start with the more professional, on the professional level people, is that right from the get-go, they'll tell you that their resumes have fallen into black holes because they don't get responses. And coming from me, I'm on both sides, the employer side and their side of, well, did you make that resume representative to a civilian so that they can understand your resume? Because they can't just expect to come out of the military, give somebody their military description of their job and have civilians understand that. So that is the number one problem. So I address that right away, try to get past that, have a presentable resume. But still, there's a big problem, because on the other side from the employers is how can they still understand what that person did in the military? So it is that person's job in that little page of trying to get them to understand that. So from an employer's position is, what can you do to try to understand that resume? And that could be a lot of different things, of hiring somebody that has been in the military to read those resumes, maybe have a veteran on your HR crew to read those. That person does not have to be a full-time employee. They can be a part-time, they can be a 1 day a week person, or 1 day every other week, something like that. Just try to make that effort to get somebody who can understand, or have educational classes for your HR by maybe a veteran so that they can learn. There's a couple different ways that you can do that. But from a veteran's perspective, to have that resume go into a black hole is so debilitating, because they've been out there. Most of our professionals in the military have been running their own units, anywhere from what Marlin said was anyone from an E5 and above. If you know their status, that what you're looking at on that resume, that they held that level of E5 or above, whether that's on the enlisted side or the officer side, they were running their own units. They were running squads. They had everything that has to do with the day, from feeding their soldiers, sailors, Marines, to their getting their supplies, what they're wearing, how they're acting, doing roll call. Do they have health insurance? Is there all their paperwork in order? And then when you get up into the officers' positions, oh my gosh, they're in charge of everything. They run everything that your top executives do, plus more, because an executive in a company is only concerned with their company. But in the military, they have to be concerned with everything from the bottom of what they're eating, what's being taught to them, their training, their curriculum, their paperwork, their files, their medical. The list goes on and on. So what someone in the military can do for your company is all of the above. They've learned that is somewhere along their career path, from that E5 up, or that officer who's just, a cadet, or just at that very first entry level. They are learning all those skills as they go, because they have enlisted coming to them saying, this is what's going on. This is what we need to do. And then they, in turn, they're talking together, they're working together to do everything. So constantly they're working together on every side, from the officers to enlisted, from everything from what I just told you to what they eat, to their insurance, paperwork, all that. So when a person in the military can do all this, they think when they get out of the military, or if they're in the reserves, they think that, oh, I can get a job. It's not going to be hard. I can do all of this. They're going to want to hire me. Everyone's telling me they're going to hire me. But when they get out there, that's not the case, because there's this disconnect between employers and the military. And it's what we're trying to do here is try to find what's that disconnect so that we can fix it, so that there's not that thing of, well, should I hire this military person? Can they do the job that we're looking for? How do I know that they can do the job they're looking for? But again, going back to that veteran, what it does to them when they're not hired, or they're not even given a call back, or they're not given an interview or talked to, is they just feel like failures, because here they've done all this in their careers and learned so many. And the military is all about education. Ask Demetrius and Marlin and myself. You are constantly being educated. Sexual awareness, I could just go on and on. You're constantly learning advanced, all the way up to advanced human resources, the way to talk to people, how do you teach people. It's just constant education. It never ends in every alley that you can think of. And it does, you don't just learn it once, you do it over and over and over again until it's ingrained in you. So they are good at instructions. They are good at receiving instructions. They just ask for a moment of your time. I would just say that to a company, if you just give just a little bit more time to figure out what you can do for that veteran, that will mean everything to them. Acknowledging that they exist is part of the very first step, is just saying, can we hire this veteran? Let's take a moment and figure out what this person is trying to tell us on their resume. And I better stop myself, because I could keep going on.
No, I think that's great dialogue, and I appreciate that. I want to highlight a comment that we received from Stephanie. She did the Vet for Success program, where she had several former military come in as interns, and they were eventually hired. One of them were hired in HR. So it's a great program that she highlights. Another program that I want to highlight is a recent award winner created by the Greenville Society of Human Resource Managers. They created a program, Cracking the Code, HR Intel for Civilian Employment. And Cracking the Code is a program that was created to ease the transition of veterans from military service to civilian careers. It's a one-of-a-kind program for military veterans that give a behind-the-curtain view of what it takes to successfully transition into the civilian workplace. It's a self-paced, self-taught, and I'm not just tooting about it because I had a small cameo in the program, but it's a great program. It was developed by Society of Human Resource affiliated veterans and civilian HR managers, professionals, to provide a comprehensive look as to best practices starting from the job search and continues with through the first year of employment. So that's getting ready to be released for national consumption January 1 of next year. And so when that gets released, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'll definitely be sharing that. So veterans and even HR managers that are looking at it to see what is being taught to the veterans, be able to view that course. So I wanted to highlight those two programs. I know we're spending a lot of time on hiring, but that's the first step. It's a key step, and it's a step that a lot of veterans just want the opportunity. I want to transition to after they get to that workplace, and I want to specifically focus our efforts on reservists and National Guardsmen, because a lot of people don't understand USERRA and USERRA law, the Uniform Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act of 1994. Which is a federal law that establishes the rights and responsibilities for members of the National Guard and reserves and their civilian employers. that can be another hour program. So I'm trying to condense a lot of information on Carolyn and Marlin if you want to join in. But you're condensing the whole body of law into a short little portion of the program. But USERRA pretty much covers employment, reemployment, and retention rights when an employee serves in the uniformed services. In order to meet the criteria under USERRA for reemployment, that service member has to provide advance notice. And we're going to touch on this. I want Carolyn to touch on this because advance notice is something that a lot of employers really want to know about. You provide advance notice of military obligation to your employer. The employee has to be away for less than 5 years. The employee needs to return to work in a timely fashion. And Carolyn is also going to talk about that. And the employee cannot be separated with a disqualifying discharge or other than honorable condition with their discharge. So I want to talk briefly about the leave time and the return time. So Carolyn, can you take it away and talk a little bit about leave? First, we'll talk about leave if they have to go on active duty for any type of training or deployment, and then we'll talk a little bit about day-to-day leave like drilling and that kind of thing.
Okay, so you want to start with just what I call this. Every soldier is given a card like this. They're all taught. It is drilled into them over and over and over what USERRA is all about. So they, I think this is what you're looking for. So if a soldier, sailor, marine is activated for 1 to 30 days, they have to report the next scheduled workday. So what that means to them is that, let's say they've gotten orders to go to school and it's a 2-week class, and they have given what I call a reasonable notice to their employer. First of all, that they were even going to have that training. They have to do that. So if they did that, then for what they have to do is at their normal scheduled date to the next day after that starts, the normal scheduled date, they have to go to it. So really, it's just going to be a thing of you need to come right back to work after that in layman terms. That's what that means. So if they've been activated for 31 to 180 days of service, they have to apply within 14 days after the completion of that service. So it means if they've been gone 31 to 180 days, that they have to come back to work 14 days. Again, they have to be keeping you informed, give reasonable notice. First of all, that they had to go. Then they're supposed to give reasonable notice that, hey, I'm coming back. I can be scheduled 2 weeks after I get back. And you would say, why 2 weeks? Why not a week? Well, try to picture what they've been doing, where they've been. They've been away from their family. They've been away from taking care of all the business that they need to take care of. So, from whether it's going to the doctor, the dentist, paying your bills, whatever you normally do in your day-to-day life, they have to catch up. So just being able to sleep and get back on your sleeping pattern, because in the military, we all know there is no regular sleeping pattern, especially if you've been deployed or somewhere where your sleeping patterns are interrupted. So if they've been deployed or activated more than 181 days, they have 90 days after the completion of that service. Again, the same reasons would go. If you've been deployed, you could be deployed for a year and a half, sometimes longer. You need to just reintegrate back into society from everything that we take for granted being on over here. They need to get back into that. They need to get their head straight. They need to get their game straight. They need to get everything back in order. So we think, sometimes people will think 90 days, who could take 3 months to get yourself back together? But again, it's that sleeping pattern. It's that eating pattern. It's everything that they have to reintegrate to get back to what we take for granted as our daily activities. Again, they need to give you proper notice. First of all, that they were leaving while they're gone. 180 days is a long time. They need to give reasonable contact to you during that time of, hey, this is what's going on with me. This is when they think that I'm going to be back. This is when I think I'm going to be back. So, and then when you get back, you need to tell them, hey, I'm back. I'm in my 90 days. This is when I'm going to be back. They don't have to take 90 days. That's just provided for them if they need that. So that's the basic of the days.
I just want to share real quick 2 testimonial stories that I've seen. One firsthand experience I experienced coming back and why that's so important to have that time back. And one that one of my fellow service members, when he got back, my personal story is those 2 weeks, you need to reorient yourself on what side of the road to drive.
That's right.
When you're overseas and you're driving, you may want, you need a little bit of time to remember what side of the road you're supposed to drive on. And I'm sure Marlin can tell you a little bit about some of those stories. Another one of those that I did not experience, thank God, but one of my battle buddies experiences, sometimes your family and specifically children need to remember who their parents are. And when you go overseas and you come home and you have a child that's under 1 that doesn't know who dad or mom is, they might see them on Skype and I've seen the tears from both, not just service member, but the child of not recognizing that service member coming home, or not, wanting to go to that parent that had been home the entire time. It's tough to see, you want to hold the child and the child has no clue who you are, or the child may only know your voice because, you read bedtime stories at night, so they recognize the voice, but not the person, because you can't get on FaceTime and you can't get on Skype. So, those things do happen, and that time with their family is very necessary. So I just wanted to share that as reasons why that leave time is so important. But can you transition and talk a little bit about day to day? What maybe they didn't go to training, maybe they just have a typical drill schedule, and maybe one of those days fall on a weekday or fall on a work day. Can you talk a little bit about, the drill schedule or that day to day operations for that reservist or National Guardsman?
Right. So from the ESGR point, I am not biased towards the military person because I understand the employer side and the military side. So from the soldier side, again, ESGR is always stressing to them, you need to be reasonable. You need to keep your employer in contact with what you are doing. And every soldier, sailor, Marine is given a drill schedule. Do not let them tell you that they do not have this. Yes, they do. If they don't, they know how to get one. So like I said, I am not biased towards them. You just tell them, I need it. If you can't provide me one, provide me what I'm going to call, everyone has a different, what their boss is called in the military. So I'm just going to say the civilian term of boss. You just say, well, if you can't provide it for me, let me have your boss's phone number. I'll call them and I'll get it. I'm sure that they're going to send it to me because I was at a meeting where ESGR representatives told me that they would be glad to speak to me. Because if you do that, I tell you, they will come up with that drill schedule, or they're going to have to come up with that phone number. Do you think that they want you talking to their boss in the military? No, they do not. So you just put that to them just like that. They can provide it for you. So if they all have drill schedule. Now, can a drill schedule change? Yes, it can, but it better be an emergency. That is not a normal thing for the military to change a drill schedule. And a drill schedule is on a yearly basis. So it's going to come from the fiscal year beginning to the fiscal year ending. Maybe in a natural disaster, we all know that the National Guard and Reserves may activate, especially the National Guard. So yes, in that situation, you're going to know, because you know there's a hurricane, you know there was a tornado, you don't really have a problem with where is that soldier. But again, if you have any problems with that soldier, sailor, or Marine, all you ever have to do is, that's why I had them list my information, is call me. I will get a hold of their boss and I'll ask them, hey, is that person, are they deployed? Did they have drill? Are they on training? That's what we're here for, is to help you in any way that we can. But I would just ask in the very beginning, when you hire that person, is get their boss's phone number, get their email so that you can stay in contact with them. Maybe maybe your company wants to ask, is there anything that you can do for them? Maybe you can bring them, I don't know, brownies or cookies, or have cookies sent, or maybe a pizza day for them or something. I'm just saying that it should not offend that person in the military for you having their boss's phone number and their email. And drill is usually a 2-day event. They sometimes it'll go 3, where they'll have to be there on a Friday. Very weird events can happen where those days would be abnormal during the week, but that is not normal. Normally it is Saturday and Sunday. That soldier can go back to work on Monday. Now, if there's something weird, that soldier should again be in touch with you, telling you, hey, we're having to work until 3 a.m. on Sunday night. Could you schedule me maybe starting Tuesday? Employers are reasonable. They're not going to, say, no, you need to be here, because that's not reasonable. You ask that soldier to be reasonable. Companies are also reasonable. We know that right from the get-go. Nobody's going to do that. It's just nobody's that mean, or hopefully nobody's that mean. So that would basically cover drill schedules. Just don't ever think that they don't have that drill schedule, because they do. And someone like me or Marlin, even being on his side, could always get in touch with me or somebody's boss. We all know how to get in touch with each other and can help you as the employer figure out, is this really happening? Is there a need for this? Does this person have to do this? Again, being a volunteer with the SGR, you can also ask me. I am not biased towards that soldier. I'm going to give you the truth. I'm there for you because I know that companies sacrifice when they hire the Guard and the Reserve. And then if it wasn't for you, they wouldn't have a job.
Thank you for that, Carolyn. And I want to highlight two more things on USERRA, and then spend a little bit of time, so it's 10 minutes, talking about veterans, what makes your employer or your workplace veteran friendly. But two last points on USERRA. And if you have any questions about USERRA, please type it in the chat or the Q&A and we'll address that. But the last 2 points I want to make, of course, discrimination disclaimer under USERRA: an employer must not deny initial employment, reemployment, retention in employment, promotion, or any benefit of employment to an individual on the basis of their military status, nor can they retaliate against that individual. And also the last point on USERRA I'll make, unless anybody has questions on it, is as a general rule, an employee is entitled to reemployment in a job position that he or she would have attained with reasonable certainty if not for their absence due to the military service. And a lot of people don't understand the escalator position or escalator provision in the law. And that the principle behind this is, if not for that period of absence for military service, that employee could have been promoted, or maybe on the other side, they could have been demoted or transferred or laid off due to intervening events. The provision requires the employee be reemployed in a position which reflect the pay, the benefits, the seniority, and other job perks that he or she may have obtained if they not left. And so a lot of employers don't know the escalator provision is a little bit different than some other laws that might have reemployment rights, but not the escalator rights. So you might be able to reemploy somebody in that same role, but don't give them the escalator, that additional perk or benefit or years of service or accrued vesting 401ks, so on and so forth. But we have an escalator provision here in USERRA. So I do want to touch on and spend about 10 minutes, and you both can jump in at any point on this last little few slides, but we're talking about the Veterans in the Workplace study and what makes a veteran-friendly workplace. The Department of Veteran Affairs conducted a Veterans in the Workplace study to gain an insight into improving veteran retention in the workplace. Organizations wishing to attract and retain veteran employees can benefit from veteran-friendly practices derived from the study and additional resources, and those resources are going to be provided to you at the end of the presentation. And an organization does not have to implement all of the practices, but can choose their practices which are the best fits for their company. And Brittany, if you can pop back the presentation back up, and I'll kind of go through, explain through a few of the slides. Thank you so much. So what makes a veteran-friendly workplace? So this is a resource that Carolyn provided to explain a little bit about USERRA and about the ESGR. Also provides some of your questions. You might have some general questions about USERRA, what we can and can't do. Can we demote, as far as the de-escalator, as part of the escalator provision, what benefits can be provided, how do we handle health plans for somebody who's left, what status is an employee sitting in when they leave, whether it be a furlough or leave, or what kind of status that employee is in. All those are going to be provided as part of the slideshow, the slide deck. So what makes a veteran-friendly workplace? Some of the things that businesses could consider when a member of the National Guard or reserves are called into duty. This is referred to as a mobilization within the United States, or a deployment outside the United States. An employer could support mobilized or deployed Guard or reserve members by protecting their job away from work, paying the salary difference during the deployment, and also continuing benefits for the employee and the covered family members if they choose. Some of the veteran-friendly practices, we're going to break down some of those things: the affinity groups for veterans, veterans mentoring program, a veteran-friendly EAP program, providing training to supervisors, civilian supervisors on veterans issues and available resources. Go to next slide, Brittany. So supporting veteran affinity groups. If you have enough veterans in your organization, you may want to consider creating a affinity group where veterans are able to talk through their issues amongst themselves, starting a veteran group within your organization, or supporting one if you have a larger organization and there might be a different affinity group in another office. Making sure you have the contact information for that other affinity group in that other office, and putting your employees in the separate office in touch with that affinity group. For information on the benefits and practices of affinity groups, there's a VA training services on affinity groups page on the VA website, Vets in the Workplace. That's va.gov/vet in workplace. Organizing mentoring. A veterans mentor program is a key component to veteran retention. A veteran-friendly organization could organize and support mentoring programs, which might include doing some of the following: facilitating matching employees with military experience to other veterans, developing and implementing a veterans mentoring program or supporting one that exists, and offering those resources and assistance and support when needed. That's just one more example of things a veteran business can do to be more friendly to their veterans. EAP programs. Organizations' EAP services could be veteran friendly to better support its veteran employees. With the events that occurred in Afghanistan in August, I could tell you the employers that had strong EAP programs for veterans to use for counseling, mental health counseling during that period of time with the withdrawal of troops were very beneficial. If you do decide to have an EAP program, veteran-friendly organizations with regards with those services, they provide EAP services offered by professionals trained in veteran issues. They ensure that those providers are screening veteran statuses of employees seeking assistance for themselves or for their family members. And they also screen for PTSD using the 4-item screener. It's very specific. If you know, you know. And they ensure that EAP providers are knowledgeable and resources available to veterans. When choosing EAP providers, a company can ask whether they provide veteran-friendly practices. Moving forward, training management and supervisors on the resources available to veterans and their employees within and outside the organization. There's also that stigma, PTSD and TBI that need to be dispelled. And there's training regarding that, how to deal with employees that either have PTSD or alleviate some myths that all veterans suffer from PTSD, which is not true. There's a 2012 Gallup poll reporting that 13% of American adults are considered veterans, and of those, a majority of those veterans had never been to combat situations. And the veterans who have rates of PTSD and depression range from 9 to 31%, depending on the impairment reported. So it's just dispelling that myth that all veterans have PTSD. veterans returning from combat with PTSD are likely to exhibit violent behavior, which is also not true. The Mayo Clinic says there's not one single research study exists in linking violent behavior to a diagnosis of PTSD, according to 2012 April issue of the Badge of Life. And hiring veterans means that they bring their PTSD baggage in the workplace and decrease productivity, which also is not true. There was a case study from Syracuse University that argues that skills developed through the military training makes veterans vital workers in the business environment. And veteran experience working in national and global settings with diverse workforces remain unmatched by other employees. Veterans, as Marlin said earlier, are loyal and have integrity, soft skills virtually that every employer desires. So making sure you train the managers and employees on the culture and veteran issues that include PTSD, whether working with supervisors, giving assignments, how to give assignments properly. We talked about that a little bit earlier, that 1/3, 2/3 rule that Marlin brought up. Positive reinforcement, veterans looking for feedback on how they're doing and how they can improve their work in order to make sure they meet the needs of their employer, and developing strategies to deal with problems before a crisis. And moving on to military, getting your organization involved in active duty and military veteran causes. I know Carolyn was talking about brownies, but care packages to the military is always great. We always look forward to seeing cards and stuff from overseas, housing assistance for returning veterans or transition assistance for returning veterans, and encouraging internal veteran affinity groups to lead those efforts and support them with resources. When a member of the National Guard or Reserve is called into active duty, an employer can support that mobilized or deployed guardsmen or reservesmen by either providing the job protection that I was saying a little bit earlier, pay the salary difference if possible. So if that service member provides their pay stub from the military and there's a difference between what they make on the military and what they make in the civilian world, paying the salary difference, that is extremely beneficial. And I'm sure many employees would tell their peers about how great the employer is just based on that benefit alone. It's a concern when you make a pay drop. If you are serving in a role in the civilian world that's a little bit higher than the pay that you would get at a certain rank in the military, that pay drop really affects the day-to-day life of that service member's family. That paying the salary difference is very essential. Continuing the benefits for their dependents and the employee if they choose. There's also following the USERRA guidelines when it comes to those benefits, and there is some regulations and laws with regards to continuing benefits during that period of time of mobilization or deployment. Finally, checking in with that family member as that service member is performing their military service, that training, that mobilization, that deployment, and keeping in contact with the families along with the service member, having the supervisors personally contact that family member, just making sure that they're okay. Not everybody has a family support system. Sometimes it's just that service member and that family, and having somebody and having the employer of that being the one to reach out and check on that family member, that's going to make a favorable impression on that family and on that employer. They're going to want to work harder for that employer when they get back. Inviting the family to company social events. If you have holiday parties, I know we're coming up on the holiday season, making sure that they're not excluded, that family member's not excluded because that employee's not in the country and they're out in theater. Make sure that family feels included and feel like they belong. That employee's going to also feel like they belong with that organization. And having assistance programs or affinity groups for families of employees that have been called to active duty, if your company's large enough. You don't have to do all those things, but just having though a few of those things that you can incorporate in your business makes a more veteran-friendly company. And is your veteran organization friendly? I just have a quiz just to test your business, your organization, as to veteran friendly. How veteran friendly is your organization, is your workplace? And I just have 2 slides, and you can just go through yes or no, very quick and easy questions. I won't go over that. When we send those slides out, you can assess, make that assessment, and then also use and incorporate what Marlin has discussed and what Carolyn has discussed, and take that back and incorporate that into your practices. These are some of the sources that have been provided. We'll also follow up at the end of the presentation with additional resources that our speakers have provided as well. Before I talk about the save the dates, is there any questions? I have my chat box open just to make sure we hit all the questions. But while we're waiting on any questions that may come in, I just want you all to save the date. My colleague Chris Gansorensen and Nina Bode and Mike Unger are going to be presenting on December 1st to Religious Diversity. That's our next Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion webinar here at Haynsworth, Sinkler, Boyd, Religious Diversity. And there's our contact information. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Like I said earlier, the Cracking the Code, when that gets released for national consumption, I will definitely share that on my LinkedIn, so you all have the resources, and you can share that not just with your employers, but in your, people that veterans that are looking for work that just need an encouraging word. I mean, my speech was not talking about anything related to recruitment or interviews or anything like that. That mine is just like keeping the faith when you're going out there and you're searching for jobs, understanding how difficult it is to transition. And I transitioned from military service, active duty, July 21st, 2014, and I started school August 11th. So I didn't have much of a transition period where I had weeks and weeks and months off, and I transitioned and went straight into school setting, and that's difficult transition. And Marlin, I want you to touch on the transition from active to, and some of the novel, I laugh about it because I remember how hard it was for me to choose clothes every day. Because I'm told what to wear when I work out, when I dress up, and when I go to work every day. Can you talk a little bit about some of the novel issues as we close and wait for some of the questions about transitioning and some of the simplistic issues that veterans may face?
And one of the biggest things they face is they don't understand the dress code for different companies in different workplaces. So like I said, in the Army, you had BDUs on Monday through Friday, dress greens on when you had special ceremonies and everything. They don't understand that you have to have steel-toed boots if you get a job as a stevedore working a port in Charleston. So some of those translation issues. One thing we tell the veterans that are transitioning, coming into the workforce, is that you get a military transcript when you get out the military. It lists all your duty assignments, all your training, and all the jobs that you've done in the military. And what that does, it also tells you, if I was an 88 Charlie, which is a company commander for a transportation company, it tells me all of the civilian positions that crosswalk directly to civilian occupations. So I think so. When you reach out to a veteran who's applying for a job and you set up that interview, even if it's on Zoom or Skype or Teams, and it's not in person, have that veteran send you a copy of their military transcript. It'll help you understand better what they did in the military and how beneficial it can be to you and your company.
And a few parting words. I'll start with you, Marlin, and I'll switch to you, Carolyn. 30 to 30 seconds. I know we're coming up close on time, but if you could part any wisdom to our attendees in 30 to 45 seconds.
Veterans are human beings too. Some people get tentative when you find that you're a veteran. Like I said, the myths about PTSD and things like that. But just treat a veteran just like any other job seeker. But I can tell you, the veterans will bring more to the table than your normal job seeker.
Thanks, Marlin. Carolyn?
Did you know that in the state of South Carolina, we have so many veterans moving here that 1 in 10 people in the state are veterans. And almost half of our nation's military strength is in the National Guard and Reserve. So if it wasn't for companies like you hiring them, who would? Where would we be as a nation? And just a quick little story, how to be the best recruiters, or how to use the best recruiters you have are through those military people that you hire. Because I've seen it happen at drill. If somebody's working at a good company, what do? They turn around and they tell every other person in that unit, and there could be over 100 people, that, hey, my company sent me this. My company sent brownies for the entire crew over in Afghanistan. They sent us all, I don't know, poppets, whatever it is that you sent. The real life story from veterans, you don't understand what goes on when a company sends something to somebody over there. Everybody gathers around. Your company did what for you? My company didn't do anything. And they may want to jump over to your company. So it means everything, just sending even the littlest thing, because so many people are in your business over there wanting to know what's in that package you got. What's in that package? Can I have some? If it's something to eat, you better share it with all of us. So again, your veterans are going to be your best recruiters if you do anything above and beyond for them. And I appreciate, we all do, anything that you do above and beyond for them when they're deployed. So thank you if you do. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both for presenting with me. I appreciate both of you taking the time out to present. Thank you, everybody, for attending this presentation here today. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks for joining this webinar presented by Haynsworth Sinkler Boyd. To learn more about the firm and its services, visit hsblawfirm.com.